Well, hi, we're here at the Metals Investor Forum, and I'm chatting with Sean Brodrick. A lot of the conversation at the forum is about more mainstream metals. That's sort of the focus, but you and I share an interest in energy metals.
Yes.
And I think we're both fairly bullish on certain aspects of that. So let's talk about energy metals. Like, when we talk about lithium-ion batteries, they're the dominant battery driving the especially electric vehicle boom. But lithium-ion batteries have lithium in them. We were just saying before, they're really nickel cobalt batteries.
Right. And that's really something people are overlooking in this market. When I was at the PDAC, I talked to a bunch of lithium companies. In fact, it was somewhat hilarious because I talked to 3 South American companies in a row. And they all had people who came from the same place, which had lost people who worked for that company. They'd all gone to these 3 companies, and they all swore they had the next lithium project in that triangle down in South America. And so that's super hot. And if you go to Nevada, it's the same thing. I mean, I spent like a week driving around that area in Nevada, just like speaking to these guys who are explorers in that area, and they are just rolling guys out of retirement and shaking the dust off them and like putting them back to work because they believe that's on the next thing. But cobalt has the brightest future. If you look at a price chart of cobalt, which isn't easy because it like isn't really traded on the market, but it just keeps going up and up and up. And so many people are saying, well, it has to pause, it has to reach some kind of pullback. And yeah, it probably does. But at the same time, there are supply-demand pressures coming together in there. I mean, it isn't just that big factory they're building out in Nevada. Over in Asia, they're building a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
And they need cobalt in a big, big way. And so the demand, they can see this tidal wave of demand just coming up, and that has to be filled somehow. So the question becomes, who fills it?
Absolutely. And I mean, cobalt's an interesting market for all kinds of reasons, the pricing being opaque, like you said. Also, the vast majority of cobalt is byproducts. There's very few, 2% of the market is filled with cobalt mines. The rest of it is all byproduct from copper and nickel. And cobalt has these 2 really interesting forces in it, where 60% of it comes from the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and more than half of it is refined in China. So there's these 2 sort of strangle points that both have their own uncertainties associated with them. China wants cobalt for its own uses. Does that limit supply elsewhere? The DRC is a questionable jurisdiction for all kinds of reasons. So it's a market with a lot of question marks, but a huge, like you say, cascade of demand coming.
Right. And questionable jurisdiction is an interesting way to put it. It is a hellscape for miners there, or at least certain projects have been. And so really gotten the human rights people out there. Mm-hmm. And so you have big companies saying, we aren't going to buy cobalt from the DRC anymore. So where are they going to buy it from? And so that's why you're seeing projects, just
in Canada.
Yeah, Canada especially just kicked into higher gear. They say we have to get this going because somebody has to feed this demand. And if they aren't going to buy from the DRC, they're probably going to actually buy from us. Now, you can't put these things into production overnight. Many of them have a lot of work to go before they even know that they have something usable. And that's the problem. You can have cobalt. Do you have enough? Is it
near-term enough? Yeah.
Near-term enough. There are many, many things that go into it, but you can see the race is on. Absolutely. And so I think that there's some real potential there.
And I mean, the race is largely driven by electric vehicles.
Yes.
It's so interesting that for years, the electric vehicle problem was that batteries were too expensive. Battery prices have come down. It's crazy, 16% a year or something for the past, I don't know how many years, to the point where now we're looking at, in a year or 2, 3 at a max, electric vehicles will be cost competitive without subsidies with an internal combustion engine. So electric vehicles are an obvious force in the future.
Yeah, and you can see that the oil companies are realizing this. They've been fighting this forever, right?
Right.
But now they're starting to say, we can actually see this happening. They're starting to make some long-term projections on what this actually are going to do. So it's really about the supply of the metals. Can they build enough batteries? And it's not just cars, right? I mean, energy storage is a huge thing. And so if you generate power from the sun, how are you going to store it? Well, you might want some kind of energy storage system that requires huge batteries and stuff, and that's even more demand. So you put those things together, it really looks a bright future for cobalt, for nickel, which we haven't even talked about yet. But I mean, it's only a small slice of the actual nickel demand, but obviously it'll be a growing part of demand, especially because prices are made on the margins. You can see how that might be a price driver.
Absolutely. So the energy metal sector, we certainly saw the lithium boom a year and a half ago that went crazy. It's still, the prices have stayed up enough to support a lot of lithium stock demand, like a lot of companies out there doing things. Cobalt is basically in that move right now. The price has moved up a bunch. The stocks are getting a lot more active. There's a lot of companies, like you say, coming out of the woodwork, looking at new projects. And then the nickel side, if you want to get involved in the energy metal sector, it's a bit more of a diversified bet because you have all this other nickel demand going on in that sector.
Right.
So yeah, it's a pretty dynamic and interesting sector. A lot of opportunity for sure.
I think that it's going to be a very exciting sector for investors. I mean, I love gold. I just started a new publication focused on microcap gold. Of course I do. I love gold and silver. But people have to realize the sun doesn't set and rise on gold and silver. There's a lot more to it. And there will be fortunes to be made in the energy metals sector going forward. And I think that if people seize those opportunities, they could do very well.
I think we should leave it at that.
All right. That sounds good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.